Welcome. In this video, we will explore two topics, ear and eye. These topics typically account for 20% of the department exam. First, we will start with the ear. Sound has two properties, frequency, also called pitch, and intensity, also called loudness. Frequency is measured in hertz. Frequency ranges from low 20 hertz to high 20,000 hertz. Intensity, also called loudness, is measured in decibels and ranges from 20 decibel to 120 decibel. Sounds higher than 120 decibel can be painful and result in permanent hearing loss. Now we will consider the general anatomy of the ear. First, we will start from the left side with the auricle or pinna. It collects the sound like a parabolic disc. The auricle has two parts, helix and earlobe. Next, the auricle focuses the sound into the auditory canal, also called external auditory meatus, and onto the tympanic membrane or eardrum. Thus far, we have considered the outer ear, from the auricle to the tympanic membrane. Now, if we look at the middle ear, it contains the ossicles, the three tiniest bones in the body, and the eustachian tube, also called auditory tube. The ossicles, in order, are malleus, incus, and stapes. The ossicles serve to transfer sound energy from the eardrum through the bones and onto the cochlea for conversion into electrochemical action potential. Also in the middle ear, we find the eustachian tube. It is connected to the middle ear with a passageway that leads downward into the pharynx, the back of the mouth and throat. The main role is to equalize the air pressure on both sides of the eardrum, to allow for sound vibrations and transmission. This tube is the cause for otitis media, middle ear infections in children. A child has a near horizontal auditory tube. As a result, germs can easily pass into the middle ear. In adults, the tube is nearly vertical. Therefore, adults are less likely to encounter such infections. Now we move into the inner ear. The inner ear consists of the semicircular canals for angular movement, which is 3D axis movement, the vestibule for horizontal and vertical balance, and the cochlea for hearing. Next, sitting at the base of the stapes, we find the oval window, connected to the cochlea. Likewise, here at the base of the vestibule, there is the round window. It serves to absorb excess sound energy and prevent hearing of echoes. There are two muscles near the ossicles, one the tensor tympani and the other stapedius. Both muscles are designed to help with safe hearing in the event of loud noises. They dampen the energy by restricting excess sound energy from reaching the cochlea. It is important to note that it works only for steady loud noises like lawnmowers and not sudden sounds like gunshots or sonic booms from a jet. Now we will consider the process of hearing. In this picture, we see the ossicles shown at the top. As mentioned, the stapes is connected at the base by the oval window. In the picture, we see that the cochlea, the snail shell structure, has been opened, unraveled to form a long tube. Here it is helpful to imagine a cinnamon roll unraveled into a long tube. As to structure, the cochlea has a top portion, a tip, and a bottom portion. The top portion, scala vestibuli, contains perilymph, the helicotrema tip, and the lower portion, the scala tympani, which also contains perilymph. Here, the sound waves start at the oval window, travel down the scala vestibuli to the tip, and return back via the scala tympani to touch the round window. In the picture, the green area represents perilymph found in the scala vestibuli and scala tympani. The blue area represents the endolymph fluid in the cochlear duct. The solid red line is the vestibular membrane. We will discuss these structures shortly. Within the vestibular membrane area, not shown, are hair cells that account for the loud, sudden properties of frequency and intensity. It allows us to hear. As to hair cells, the picture states that we have high-frequency hair cells near the oval window and low-frequency hair cells at the helicotrema. Now, if we were to cut the cochlea, we would find a picture like this one. The picture shows the scala vestibuli and the scala tympani filled with perilymph, the green area. In order to hear, the sound vibrations must pass through the vestibular membrane and into the cochlear duct containing endolymph, the blue area. Here, the sound vibrations press down on the tectorial membrane, a blue leaf-like structure. Meanwhile, the sound vibrations are pressing up on the basilar membrane. Hence, the tectorial membrane is pressing down and the basilar membrane is pressing up. Both actions will cause the hair cells of the spiral organ, also called organ of Corti, to bend. In the picture, the inner hair cells are for hearing and the outer hair cells are for sound adjustments. It is important to remember that throughout the length of the cochlea, we have different sets of hair cells for different frequency of sounds. The number of hairs that we trigger for a given frequency will account for the loudness of the sound. In this picture, we continue the discussion of hair cells. As the hair cells bend, the hair cells help form the action potential that will travel down the auditory nerve to the primary auditory area in the brain. Here we see potassium-gated channels that cause depolarization. Yes, it will be potassium that creates the action potential. Before we move further, it is important to note the following. Regardless of textbook, look these up. Two types of deafness, conduction deafness and sensory neural deafness, and the Doppler effect, understanding sound coming or going. Now we will explore balance and equilibrium. Earlier, we saw the semicircular canals, the three tubes in a 3D axis arrangement. It is responsible for angular dynamic equilibrium and it contains the Crista. Likewise, the vestibule is responsible for static equilibrium. The head's position vertical and horizontal when it is not moving. This is found in the vestibule's macula. The macula contains the utricle for horizontal movement, such as accelerating in a car, and the saccule for vertical movement, such as accelerating in an elevator. These areas provide information about which way is up based on gravity, such as a carpenter's level used for paintings on a wall or a vertical fence post. In this picture, we see the macula. It contains the saccule and utricle. Please note the movement of the otolith, a stony membrane that bends special hair cells to denote the type of movement to the vestibular nerve. Note, this info will get to the cerebellum for interpretation. Here, although not shown, it will be the endolymph that plays the role of bending hair cells. As to dynamic equilibrium, the semicircular canals contain Crista, located at the ends within the ampulla. Here, the hair cells of the Crista bend in the opposite direction of the body movement. Hence, if your body is spinning clockwise in an office chair, the Crista's cupola will move in the opposite direction, counterclockwise in this example. Here too, the bending of cupola will denote the type of movement to the vestibular nerve. Note, this info will get to the cerebellum for interpretation. Here, although not shown, it will be the endolymph that plays the role of bending hair cells. Thus, the cerebellum will be informed of the direction and speed of the movement via the vestibular nerve. So motion sickness or a drunken stupor will affect the input and output to the cerebellum. Next, we will start the eye. Here your instructor will focus on certain terms on each labeled picture. On this picture, we will move in a clockwise fashion starting with the ciliary body ciliary muscles. They actually pull on the suspensory ligaments that are attached to the lens. The combination of ciliary body, ciliary muscles, and suspensory ligaments allow the lens to change shape. This fact will be important later. Next item is the iris, the colored part of your eye. It not only serves as eye color, but also contains circular and radial muscles that regulate the diameter of your pupil. Everyone's pupil is black. Next item, we're looking at the cornea. The cornea is this outer covering of your eyeball. It is exactly what contact lens float on. For those that wear contact lens, the contact lens rests on a layer of tears just above your cornea. It plays an important role in bending light, which is refraction. The cornea is continuous with the sclera. For yet another fact, if the cornea contains dings and dents, it causes an astigmatism. And in an astigmatism, the cornea reflects light in a scattered manner, causing halos to form around objects. Next, the cornea is transplantable and avascular. So, how does the cornea get its oxygen? Well, it receives oxygen from the air in front of your face. Earlier, we mentioned that the pupil is black. Why does it appear reddish on a photo when taken with a bright camera flash? With a camera flash, light goes quickly into the eye, bounces off the blood vessels, and returns back to the camera. Hence the red eye. With red eye reduction cameras, a tiny little flash precedes the actual flash. This way, you quickly close your eyes and less light enters your eyeball, therefore reducing the effect of the red eye in the photo. Now we're moving to the lens. It is a proteinaceous lens. Like the cornea, it plays an important role in refraction, the bending of light. The lens, like the cornea, not only bends light, but can also get deformed. So a cataract is the hardening or deformation of the lens. Here the lens appears cloudy and prevents the proper light rays from getting to the back of the eye. It leads to blurred vision. The lens is affected by diet. Next, we will combine the anterior and posterior chambers. The combined fluid space will be referred to as aqueous humor. The aqueous humor is the fluid in these front chambers. It is recycled. The rear big open chamber contains the vitreous humor. This fluid is not recycled. The fluid pressure in these chambers, front and rear, play the role of containing the shape of the eyeball. If the pressure drops, the retina may be torn off from the choroid, the rich blood supply providing nourishment. If this situation occurs, it is called retina detachment. Next, at the top of the picture, we find the sclera. The sclera is the white part of the eye. Just under the sclera, we have the choroid. The choroid is shown better down at the bottom. It is the blood vessel network that nourishes the retina, like a placenta. As mentioned before, the retina and the choroid must stay adhered together. In a retina detachment, the retina and the choroid peel off each other, causing the retina to die. Next term is the central fovea, or fovea centralis. It forms a linear point into the eye. As it accounts for where most of the light focuses, we have most cones, the photoreceptor for color, located here. Having the most cones at this point accounts for a stronger color perception at this point, often called visual acuity. Next, in contrast to the central fovea, we have the optic disc, or blind spot, at the neck of the optic nerve. Here, there are no rods, no cones, no photoreceptors. Hence, an object image that falls on this portion of the retina is not seen. In terms of the visible color spectrum, we have the cones. The cones allow you to see colors of the rainbow. Roy G. Biv. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. Before we continue, make a note of the following terms: eyebrows and eyelashes. Now on to the conjunctiva. The conjunctiva is a transparent mucous membrane lining the eyelids and covers the anterior surface of the eyeball, except the cornea. It is found closer to the nasal side of your eyeball. It is richly innervated with nerves and highly vascular. Hence, if a person has conjunctivitis or pink eye, a contagious bacterial eye infection, the eye will turn red. Now we turn to the lacrimal apparatus. This picture is important. As tear or exocrine glands travel by ducts, we see a passageway for tears to enter the nasal canal. Be aware of the route traveled by the tears, from the lacrimal gland, through the puncta, lacrimal canal, lacrimal sac, and the nasolacrimal duct, and out the nostril. Next, be aware of the 6 extrinsic eye muscles that move the eye. It is wise to remember the cranial nerves 3, 4, and 6, that deal with the movement of the eye. Likewise, the eyes provide information to the cerebellum as to body movement. Now we will explore refraction, the bending of light. As stated before, it is important for light to bend and focus onto the cornea and the lens. As to numbers, the cornea accounts for 75% refraction. The lens accounts for 25% of the refraction. Here, the shape of the lens plays a key role. We achieve the change in lens shape by the ciliary body, ciliary muscles pulling on the suspensory ligaments that are attached to the lens. Here we have a rule. If it's blurry on the retina, it's blurry to you. Hence, whatever the retina sees, you see. Note, in addition to the lens and cornea, the fluid chambers mentioned before also aid with refraction. Next topic, near response. Near response relates to the ability to focus on objects that are approaching you or are near you. Near response involves 3 abilities: convergence, the ability for the eyes to move towards the nose as objects get closer; constriction of the pupil, as objects approach and get closer, excess light would cause blurry vision or blurry images. Hence, by constricting the pupil, less light enters for clarity. Accommodation, the ability to change the shape of the lens. As objects get closer, the ciliary muscles contract and the lens takes on a more convex shape. More light is bent onto the retina. As we age, accommodation is often lost. Hence, after the age of 45, 50 years old, we will need bifocals as the ability for the lens to change shape is lost. Accommodation is about the change in the shape of the lens. From this picture, one finds the normal vision, called emmetropia, and the near response, where the lens is ballooned and allowed to bend more light for clarity. Terms to know: emmetropia, hyperopia, and myopia. It is important to define these terms and understand the reason for these conditions. Astigmatism, presbyopia, cataract, glaucoma. Based on this picture, we will see the reason for these conditions. Here we have two conditions: hyperopia, farsightedness. Due to the shortened eye, the image falls on some imaginary place behind the eyeball. For correction, we use a convex lens to enable more bending and pull the image forward onto the retina. Myopia, nearsightedness. Due to the longer eye, the image falls on some imaginary point in front of the retina. For correction, we use a concave lens to enable less bending and more push the image back onto the retina. In general, myopia occurs in a young person. Likewise, we see hyperopia in seniors. Around the ages of 40, 50 years old, we find presbyopia, a middle ground requiring the use of bifocal lenses. Now this picture, the layers of the retina. Be sure to know the route traveled by light and the route taken by the action potential. We look at three important layers. Pigmented layer. This layer absorbs excess light to prevent double exposure. Photoreceptor layer, which contains the rods. Rods are for contrast, primarily for night vision, and cones, color, red, blue, and green photopigments. We have about 120 to 130 million rods and 6.5 million cones per eye. Holocrine, bipolar, and amacrine cells. These adjust what is actually conveyed to the brain. Hence, as stated before, we see only what the retina sees. Here the visual information is streamlined before sending down the optic nerve and to the primary visual area of the brain. As to colors, we have three color pigments: red, blue, and green. In a rare genetic issue, some are born with a lack of red or green pigments, leading to red-green color blindness. As to 3D stereoscopic vision, we see with both eyes. Here, in depth perception, each eye sends information to both hemispheres of the brain. The brain is able to see the world from sensation and perception of both eyes. In contrast, a horse, for example, uses panoramic vision. The horse's left eye sees the left world, and the right eye sees the right world. Each eye has half of the world. Here, the horse's brain takes both halves and stitches them into one world. In this picture, we also note the crossing over point of the optic nerve, the optic chiasm. As to the fixed point or fixation point, our eyes have the ability to move medially and keep the object upon the central fovea for visual sharpness. It requires both eyes to move in synchrony.